whatever. But I didn't address him with anything besides what his character was, and I based him really on the Crane brothers, Frasier and Niles. I went to a very, very progressive private school my whole life in Brooklyn, and this was a school that was a school for the gifted, which was pretty true in two different ways. One, we were exceptionally bright, I'll give you that. The test to get into our school was a big deal. But most of the kids there were also exceptionally wealthy. I think that was the other gift. I was not. I did not come from money. But when we all dressed like this at school, like I actually dressed just like this at school. I wore these kinds of shoes and black t-shirts, that's pretty much it. So when I run into friends I haven't seen in like 40 years, they're like, dude, you haven't changed your outfit. So we looked like, you know, slobs and hippy-dippy kind of kids, but we played sports against New York's most snobby prep schools with the blue blazers and the khaki pants and the muffies and the buffies and things like that. So when I was playing James, I was channeling Niles Crane, Frasier Crane, and every kid I played sports against from middle school through high school. The affectation of James is much more obnoxious than it has anything to do with his sexuality. That's how those guys spoke. For real. For real. I know guys that spoke like that. I beat them up after school, but that's a whole different story. That's not, I'm not telling you should do that. But they do stop teasing you when you're giving them a noogie in their chest. You know what a noogie is? Knuckle right in the center.
Yeah.
It's great, because you can still talk to them while you're doing it. Because also where I grew up in Brooklyn, we would have conversations with people to make sure they understood stuff. You never had to really fight or show a weapon. You would just have to have an understanding. And then everything was good. Yes. I grew up in a very, very colorful neighborhood in Brooklyn. Yes. Anyway. All right, who's got another question for me? Nobody. Yes.
Any favorite Kaiba lines?
You know what? I don't really have any sort of like one-off Kaiba lines because I mean it's really I don't. You guys pick up more on that than I do. I look at it as like just this sort of, you know, big brushstrokes of his attitude. Yeah. See, that was funny. That was a funny line. You know, those kinds of things are good, and of course, in the script, a lot of times it'll be written one way. And I might say it the way it's written, then of course say it in a slightly altered way that as a joke right after that take, and then of course the director or the writer might go, you know what, that's more Kaiba-esque because you know you're so so connected to the character that you kind of know the way that they would speak. Same thing with James. There were lines that I changed because of you want to keep it consistent with the way these characters even do things like James rarely uses contractions. He would never say it's, he would say it is. Right? Things like subtleties like that help the character maintain the character. So with Kaiba, I don't really remember like, here's a one-liner, here's a joke line. It was the scene. And I think that if too much of that stuff is in there and too much of the weight is put on a funny dig, then you start to get into you're in a Schwarzenegger movie. And every line is like, I let them go. It's like, all right, shut up. It's like every action hero has a team of comedy writers behind them. It's like, what should I say here? It's like, hold on a second, we're working on something right now. It's like, because anytime I've been in a sort of spy attack sort of chase scene or a car chase in real life, I don't have anything funny to say. I don't have any, hold on a second, no, I need a second. Hey, guys, got something for me right here? Right during, no, okay. Yeah. All right, who hasn't asked me a question that really wants to ask me a question but feels like they just are too scared to do it because this is the place you can do it? How many times are you going to hang out with me? Well, all weekend. But how many times are you going to hang out with me where you can ask me a question? Nobody, huh? Okay. You'll regret it when you walk out of here because I won't answer your question later. Yes.
Any fun fan stories?
Fun fan stories. I was just talking about this yesterday with one of your con crew members here who's running the convention, and they were checking with me about schedule and how much I wanted to do. And I said, there's a choice that you make when you do these conventions as a guest. Obviously, this is not my job, right? Yes, I mean, I can get compensated for my time and things like that, and I have my autographs, yes. But it's not my job. Like, I didn't start my career as a voice actor to go, and then I'm going to make appearances at conventions. I actually don't get a chance to get fan feedback besides tweets and Facebook stuff when I'm doing my work. Now, as a musician, if I were playing for you guys and you cheered for me, great. I feel the love. But as a voice actor, I'm mostly alone in a booth recording stuff, and then it's out there. I might read a review, hate it, love it, whatever, but I don't get to have any connection with the fans like that. So I consider myself like a hands-on guest. Like, I like the interaction. I'm humbled by "you're the voice of my childhood" comment, which means more to me than you think, because I grew up watching cartoons too, and I have had a chance to meet what I consider influential heroes for me, both good and bad. I've had experiences where I've met people that I've respected and loved their art, and it turns out that they're mean, which can be devastating. So I understand the responsibility of, if you're going to come to a convention where you're going to meet people that love and respect your work, and that might have influenced them, or there's been some heartfelt stories of helping you get through tough times, whether there's been loss or whatever, depression, things like that. When you realize that these shows are much more powerful than I do funny voices on a cartoon. If you don't respect that, then don't come to conventions as guests. Don't be part of that, because this is a very special group of people. Also, I've said in the past, if the real world were as accepting and non-judgmental as the convention world was, we'd have a much better world in the real world, right? Yeah. So it's a great social experiment for people who have never been to an anime convention or a Comic-Con to experience it and go, wow, even just how many times have you seen someone who might not physically be what you'd expect Wonder Woman to look like, but the first comment is, awesome job on that cosplay? Mm-hmm. Whereas if they were walking outside, they might get some sort of body shaming, which is just disgusting. But that's not what this environment is about. So, fan stories. I've had awesome experiences. One that comes to mind is, way before Facebook, when the internet was new and it was like the Flintstones pigeon that was punching out like things like that, when fans would send me interview requests or whatever, or send an email to me, because my email address is on my website, I would try to answer every fan mail request that I got. And it was a lot, but if someone took the time to write me, I'd write them back. And so I got an email once from a young woman who was, I think, in 5th grade, 6th grade, and she wanted to interview the voice actor for Brock and James. Now, also, she understood the concept that there was a voice actor and she wasn't just writing to Brock or writing to James, which I get too from older people. I've had marriage proposals to Kaiba from like 50-year-old women, or like and I'm like, yeah, that's another story. We'll talk about that in a second. But this young girl wrote me this letter saying, I just started a new school. I don't have any friends yet, and I thought it would be really cool for my class project. They asked me to do an interview with someone, meaning like a family member or something like that, if you would be willing to do an interview with me. And I said, sure, send me a list of questions and I'll write them back. That's what I normally do. It's much easier that way for me, because my schedule is, you write me some good questions and I'll just give you a nice big chunk as my answers. So I wrote the letter, sent back the email, done. So I'm doing a convention, maybe it's 3 years ago now, in Florida. SuperCon, huge convention. And this woman comes up to me who is, I don't know, 6'1", this very attractive woman, I guess now she's in her 30s, and says, "Hi Eric, you probably don't remember me, but in 5th grade I wrote you and I sent you this to do an interview with me, and you actually did it." And I said, "Yeah, no, well, I tried to do that as much as possible." She said, "Yeah, but you don't understand. Like, I told you that I had no friends in school, and after I had, I did this interview with you, and I read the interview to my class, I was one of the most popular kids in the school."
Aww.
And it changed my whole, like, school experience.